I never thought my own family would betray me. I always believed that when times got hard, we would stand together. But I was wrong. When my father passed away, I was heartbroken. I sat at the funeral, silent, my heart heavy with grief. That was when I heard them. My own siblings, they whispered behind my back. "She doesn't deserve anything. She's a nobody." I froze. My hands shook. I wanted to believe I had misheard, but I hadn't. Their voices were sharp, filled with cruel laughter. At the moment I needed family the most, they mocked me. It felt like the floor had opened beneath me. I had given everything for this family, my time, my energy, my love. And yet, in my darkest moment, they showed me how little I meant to them. I bit my lip, holding back tears. That was not the place for anger. That was not the time to fight. But inside me something broke. And in its place, something new began to grow. Not hate, not fear, but strength. I made a quiet promise to myself that day. I would not forget their words. I would not forgive this betrayal. They thought I was weak. They thought I would simply walk away. But they were wrong, very wrong. Because what happened after this moment would change everything. And by the time I was done, they would never look at me the same way again. But before I continue, I want to know something from you. Tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from? And what time is it for you right now? I would love to hear your answers. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Sarah, and I am the youngest in my family. From the outside, people thought we were close. We looked like a happy family, smiling in photos, showing off at weddings and holidays. But inside the house, the truth was very different. I grew up in the shadow of my older siblings. My brother Michael was the golden child. He was loud, confident, and always praised for his charm. My sister Emily was the smart one. She got awards in school, and everyone said she would become a great lawyer one day. And me? I was the quiet one, the one nobody noticed, the one who was told to sit down, stay quiet, and not get in the way. My parents never said they loved me less, but I could feel it in small ways. When Michael got a new bike, I got an old one with scratches. When Emily needed help with homework, my parents stayed up late with her. But when I asked for help, they said they were tired. It was like my needs were always at the bottom of the list. Still, I tried to be good. I cleaned the house. I helped with cooking. I stayed out of trouble. I told myself that if I worked hard enough, they would see me. They would be proud of me. But the years passed, and nothing changed. When we sat around the dinner table, Michael and Emily would talk about their plans. College, jobs, future houses, travel. I would sit there quietly, listening. If I tried to speak, they would interrupt. If I shared an idea, they laughed. Sometimes my mother joined in. She would say, "Don't worry about things you can't handle, Sarah. Leave that to your brother and sister." Her words stung, but I swallowed them. I learned to keep my thoughts inside. I carried my dreams in silence. Deep down, though, I had my own strength. I was not loud like Michael. I was not sharp like Emily. But I was patient. I was steady. I noticed things others ignored. And I knew one day, patience would matter more than noise. My father was the only one who treated me with quiet kindness. He didn't say much, but I knew he saw me. When the others were gone, he would sit with me in the garden. He would tell me about the value of honesty, hard work, and respect. He once said, "Sarah, the world underestimates the quiet ones, but they don't know that silence can hide great strength." Those words stayed with me. They became my shield whenever my siblings mocked me. I told myself, one day, they will see who I really am. But my siblings grew more selfish as we got older. Michael bragged about his business deals, though most of them failed. Emily boasted about her law studies, though she barely passed her exams. They pretended to be successful, but deep down, they were insecure. And to hide their weakness, they made me their target. At family gatherings, Michael would laugh and say, "Don't expect Sarah to do much. She's just the extra child." Emily would smile and add, "Maybe she'll find some small job to keep her busy." Everyone laughed. Even my parents sometimes smiled instead of stopping them. I sat there pretending I didn't care, but inside I felt my heart crack. I tried to remind myself that family mattered more than words, that maybe one day they would change. But betrayal grows slowly. It starts with small cuts. And those small cuts add up until the pain is too heavy to ignore. I didn't know it then, but their cruelty at the dinner table was only the beginning. Soon, I would face a betrayal so deep it would change my life forever. Life moved forward, but the cracks in my family grew deeper. Michael and Emily grew more arrogant. They spoke less to me, except when they wanted to mock me. I tried to stay strong, but it was not easy. Then everything changed. My father fell ill. At first, it was small. Coughing, looking tired, needing rest. But soon it became worse. The hospital visits began. The medicines, the late nights, the fear that never left our house. My siblings were shocked at first. They acted worried. They posted pictures of themselves holding Father's hand, writing messages about family love online, but in reality, they were never there. After the photos, they disappeared. They had parties to attend, friends to meet, careers to chase. I was the one who stayed. I was the one who sat beside Father every night, holding his hand when the pain kept him awake. I was the one who learned which medicines he needed, which doctors he trusted, which food he could eat. I was the one who cleaned the house, cooked the meals, and kept things together when my mother broke down in tears. Weeks turned into months. My life became smaller and smaller. I left my job to take care of him. My savings ran out. I wore the same clothes, ate little, and spent every hour between the hospital and home. I was tired, but I told myself this was what love meant. This was what family should do. Michael and Emily visited once a week, sometimes less. They arrived with smiles, holding expensive coffee in their hands. They stayed for 20 minutes, asked a few questions, then left. When Father cried out in pain, they looked uncomfortable. When the nurses asked for help, they stepped back. I did everything, but in their eyes, I was still the useless one. One evening, when I was bringing food to Father's room, I overheard them in the hallway. Michael said, "Sarah is wasting her time. She's never going to have a real life." Emily laughed and replied, "She's just a maid in her own house." They didn't know I was standing there. Their voices cut through me like knives. I stood frozen, holding the tray, fighting the tears that blurred my eyes. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them that I had given up everything while they gave up nothing, but I stayed silent. I swallowed my pain, because Father needed me. I could not waste my strength on their cruelty. Father noticed. One night, when the others had gone, he looked at me with weak eyes. His voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Sarah, I know what you do for me. I see your sacrifice. Don't think it's unnoticed." Tears filled my eyes. It was the first time in a long time I felt seen, but his words also hurt, because I knew time was running out. And then the worst day came. The hospital called early in the morning. Father had taken his last breath. I rushed there, my chest heavy, my vision dark. I held his hand one last time, but he was gone. The man who had given me hope was no longer in this world. I cried until I had no strength left. Michael and Emily arrived later, acting like broken-hearted children. They hugged people, wiped fake tears, and took more photos to post online. But their eyes were cold. When they looked at me, I saw no grief. I saw calculation. I saw greed. At the funeral, I sat alone, staring at the ground. I could still hear their whispers. She doesn't deserve anything. She's a nobody. My heart ached. But in that ache, something else began to form. A storm. Because I realized this illness, this death, was only the beginning. The real betrayal was still waiting for me. After the funeral, the house felt colder than ever. The flowers wilted. The voices of neighbors faded. Life returned to silence. But I could not rest. I knew the next storm was coming. My father had left behind property, savings, and the family home. It was not a fortune, but it was enough to matter. Enough to change lives. And in my siblings' hands, it was enough to turn them into monsters. A week after the funeral, my mother called for a family meeting. She said the lawyer would be there to read Father's will. I felt nervous, but I hoped that maybe this time things would be fair. Maybe this time my sacrifices would mean something. Michael and Emily arrived in shining cars. Michael stepped out in a suit, as if he owned the world. Emily wore a designer dress, sunglasses still on even inside the house. They hugged Mother dramatically, making sure everyone saw their grief. But when they looked at me, their eyes were sharp with contempt. We sat around the living room. The lawyer placed a thick folder on the table. My heart pounded as the pages rustled. I wanted to believe my father had remembered me, that he had seen my sacrifices, my sleepless nights, my care. But before the lawyer could begin, Michael leaned back in his chair. He smirked and said, "Let's be real. Sarah doesn't deserve anything. She never achieved anything. Why waste Father's hard work on her?" Emily laughed softly. "She should be grateful if we let her stay in the house for a while. That's more than she deserves." Their words burned my ears. My hands shook. I opened my mouth to protest, but Mother's silence cut me deeper than their cruelty. She sat there, her eyes lowered, saying nothing. She didn't defend me. She didn't stop them. It felt like betrayal from all sides. The lawyer cleared his throat, uncomfortable. He began to read. Father had divided everything between his children. But something was wrong. Something was missing. My name. The lawyer read again. The house, the land, the accounts. All in Michael and Emily's names. Nothing for me. Not a single thing. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened. The room spun. I asked the lawyer to check again, but he shook his head. The will had been changed just weeks before Father's death. Changed when he was too weak to speak clearly. Changed when I was the one by his side every day. I looked at my siblings. They were smiling. Emily leaned toward me and whispered, "Looks like Father finally agreed with us. You're nothing." Michael added, "Don't worry, Sarah. Maybe we'll let you keep some old clothes. That's about your worth." The others in the room shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. The lawyer closed the folder. The meeting was over, and my world was shattered. I sat frozen in my chair as everyone left. The voices faded. The cars drove away. The house grew quiet. Only the echo of their laughter remained in my ears. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight. But I couldn't. Not yet. That night, I cried until dawn. I cried for my father, for the love I gave, for the nights I spent by his side. I cried for the betrayal so deep it cut through my soul. But in those tears, something else began to rise. A fire. I remembered my father's words. Silence can hide great strength. They thought they had won. They thought they had broken me. But they had no idea what I carried inside. And they had no idea what was coming next. Days turned into weeks after the will was read. I wandered through the house like a ghost. Every corner reminded me of my father, his chair by the window, his books on the shelf, the smell of his old coat hanging by the door. But now, everything that was his no longer felt like mine. Michael and Emily had already begun making changes. They spoke to real estate agents, planning to sell the land. They argued over how to split the money from Father's savings. They treated me like a guest in my own home. One afternoon, I overheard them in the kitchen. Their voices were low, but sharp. Michael said, "Good thing we made him sign when Sarah wasn't around." Emily laughed. "He didn't even know what he was signing. He was too weak to fight back." Michael added, "By the time she realized it was too late, she has nothing." My heart sank. The truth hit me harder than anything before. They had tricked my father, manipulated him when he was fragile, when he trusted them most. They stole from him, and through him, they stole from me. I wanted to burst into the room and scream at them, but my legs wouldn't move. I stood frozen in the hallway, my fists clenched, tears burning in my eyes. I knew then, this was not just selfishness. This was betrayal in its cruelest form. Later, that night, I tried to speak to Mother. I told her what I had heard. I begged her to see the truth, but she only sighed and said, "Your siblings are successful. They know how to manage things. Maybe it's better this way." Her words pierced me deeper than knives. Better this way? Better that everything I had given, every sacrifice, every sleepless night meant nothing? Better that I was erased from my father's legacy as if I never existed? I realized then that I was alone. Truly alone. No one would defend me. No one would fight for me. If I wanted justice, I would have to take it myself. The days that followed were heavy with silence. I watched my siblings from the shadows. Michael paraded around, boasting about his new plans. Emily ordered workers to start renovations. They laughed in the very house I had turned into a home. But every insult, every cruel smile, only fueled me more. I began to write everything down, every detail, every word I overheard, every paper they touched, every lie they told. I gathered proof, silently and carefully. They thought I was broken. They thought I was powerless. But inside me the fire grew stronger. I remembered my father's frail hands holding mine, the look in his eyes when he struggled to speak, the trust he placed in me. And I swore to myself, I would not let his memory be stained by their greed. One night, I sat by the fireplace, staring at the flames. The house was quiet. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. I whispered into the fire, as if my father could hear me. They stole from you. They stole from me. But I will not let them win. I promise you, Father. I will fight back. And in that moment, my grief transformed into something sharper, something stronger. It became resolve. The betrayal was complete. I had lost everything. But I still had the truth. And with that truth, I would build my revenge. From that night by the fire, everything inside me changed. I was no longer the quiet daughter who waited for respect. I was no longer the sister who tolerated mockery. I was no longer the one left behind. I was someone new. Someone my siblings had never met. Someone they would regret underestimating. The first thing I did was learn. I spent hours at the library, reading about inheritance laws. I talked to people who had fought similar battles, I studied how documents could be forged, how signatures could be manipulated, how fragile men like my father were often exploited. And then I started digging. I found the hospital files. They showed my father was heavily medicated during his last weeks. The drugs made him weak, confused, unable to fully understand. Yet, during that time, Michael and Emily had presented him with legal papers. That was no coincidence. I went back to the notary's office where the will was signed. I asked questions, politely at first. The clerk there remembered my siblings well. She let slip a detail that made my heart race. They were in such a hurry. They didn't even let your father rest. He looked so tired, I thought he would fall asleep at the table. That was enough for me. I began building a folder. Inside it, every scrap of evidence I could find. Medical records, receipts, witness statements, handwriting samples. I created a wall of truth against their mountain of lies. But revenge is not only about proof. It is also about timing. I knew I couldn't strike too soon. If I revealed my hand too early, they would bury me with their money and power. No, I had to wait until they believed they had won completely. So I played along. I smiled when they mocked me. I nodded when they gave me orders. I made them think I was broken, finished, harmless. Meanwhile, every insult, every smirk, every cruel word went into my memory like fuel. One evening, Emily came to me with a smirk. She said, "Sarah, you should start looking for a small apartment. This house is too big for you. Besides, you'll never afford it on your own." I bit my tongue until it bled. I wanted to spit the truth in her face. But instead, I only said, "You're right, Emily. Thank you for your advice." Inside, though, I carved her words into stone. Each one would return to haunt her. I also prepared myself, not just legally, but emotionally. I knew the day of reckoning would come, and when it did, I had to be stronger than I had ever been. So, I practiced speaking with confidence. I wrote letters and tore them up until my voice on paper was sharp as a blade. I rehearsed standing tall in the mirror, not the timid girl they once controlled, but a woman who carried fire in her eyes. My father once told me, "Patience is a form of strength." Now, I understood. Revenge is not a quick strike. It is a slow burn, like embers waiting under ash, ready to ignite at the right touch of air. Weeks passed. My siblings grew bolder. Michael bragged to his friends about the new project he would fund with father's money. Emily hosted gatherings, strutting around the house as though she were queen. They thought they had erased me. They thought I was nothing. But while they celebrated, I sharpened my weapons in silence, paper by paper, fact by fact, truth by truth. And when my folder was full, when every piece of the puzzle fit, I whispered to myself the words I had been waiting for. It's time. The day of reckoning arrived like thunder after a long storm. It was the reading of the updated will in front of extended family and close friends. Michael and Emily were already there, dressed in their finest clothes, smiling with the arrogance of victors. They greeted relatives warmly, acting like generous hosts, while I sat quietly in the corner. To them, I was invisible. To me, they were already condemned. The lawyer began, his voice echoing in the silent room. He read through the will, every word a knife twisting in my chest. According to that paper, everything, every acre, every account, every possession, belonged to my siblings. Not a single line bore my name. Gasps filled the room. Some looked at me with pity, others with disdain. Michael leaned back smugly, his arm draped across the chair. Emily's smile widened, sharp and cruel. but I did not flinch. Instead, I stood, slowly, calmly. All eyes turned toward me. "With respect," I said, my voice steady, "this will is not valid." A ripple of shock passed through the room. Michael scoffed. "Oh, please, Sarah, don't embarrass yourself." Emily chuckled. "What proof could you possibly have? You've always had nothing." That was when I placed the folder on the table, thick, heavy, overflowing with truth. I opened it, one piece at a time. Medical records showing father's weakened state. Statements from nurses who confirmed he was too frail to understand complex documents. Receipts proving my siblings had rushed legal procedures during his hospital stay. Even handwriting analysis that showed father's signature had been forced, trembling, unnatural. Every page was a hammer striking their lies. Every detail was a torch setting fire to their false empire. The lawyer's face grew grave. Relatives leaned forward, whispering in shock. Michael's smugness cracked. Emily's smile faltered. I looked directly at them and spoke with the calm fury of years of silence. "You didn't just betray me. You betrayed father. You robbed him of his dignity in his final days. You robbed him of the right to decide. And you thought I would stay quiet. You thought I was weak, but I have carried father's strength in me all along." The room was silent. No one moved. Even the air seemed to freeze. Michael stammered. This is nothing but lies," but his voice shook. Emily tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. The lawyer raised his hand and said firmly, "These claims are serious. This will cannot be honored until a full investigation is conducted." It was as if the ground beneath them cracked. Their victory crumbled in an instant. Relatives who had once praised them now turned away. Whispers grew into condemnation. How could they do this to their own father? How could they betray their own blood? I stood taller than ever before. For the first time, I was not the invisible one. I was the one with truth, with courage, with the voice my father always believed I had. In the weeks that followed, the case moved forward. The court reviewed the evidence. Witnesses spoke. The truth spread like wildfire, and in the end, justice was done. The fraudulent will was dismissed. The rightful inheritance restored. Father's honor protected. Michael and Emily lost everything they had stolen. Not only the land, not only the money, but also the respect of the family and the community. Their names became whispers of shame, while mine carried weight for the first time. Yet, when the judgment was read, I did not smile. I did not cheer. Because this was never about greed. It was never about gold or land or titles. It was about father. It was about keeping his memory pure, untainted by their lies. One evening, after everything was settled, I returned to the house. I sat by the same fireplace where I had once whispered my promise. The fire crackled gently, warm and calm. I closed my eyes and spoke softly into the flames. "Father, it's done. They tried to erase me. They tried to erase you. But we are still here. And we won." A tear slipped down my cheek, but it was not of pain. It was of release, of closure, of peace. And as I watched the flames dance, I realized something. Revenge had been my fire. But justice, that was my light. If you stayed with me till the end, thank you. These stories remind us that betrayal can cut deep, but truth and courage always find a way through. If you want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and join me here next time. Your support means everything.